Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it is June 20th of 2021, and it's 8:37 p.m. here in Fort Worth, Texas. Uh, I got a couple of things tabbed here to talk about, and I guess let's jump into it. Jump into it now. Um, this is the first thing. I spent a little bit over a year and a half in Orlando, Florida, and then I spent over 5 years in Miami, Florida. Uh, in uh, in Miami, Florida, I uh, I loved the beaches. I mean, it was just fantastic. Uh, what I didn't love about Miami was the drivers, because the police down there, I'm guessing, uh, don't enforce traffic regulations. I guess because of a lot of tourists, and I just don't, uh, people that stop at stop signs. I'm talking about mainly, like on side streets when you come to, like, when you're on a side street and you come to the main street or something like that. People just drive. They don't stop. Uh, it was just amazing. I didn't make a video. I thought about making a video of it and showing. Uh, and yeah, I was just not impressed with the Miami Police Department at all. And it looked to me like, and I didn't have any special insight. I was able to monitor their communications. They weren't encoded at that time. Uh, and then also, when I worked at a mall for security at a mall in Miami, Dadeland Mall. And I think on Friday or Saturday nights, maybe during the day too, uh, they used an off-duty Miami police officer to be there. Now, he didn't have the duties that we had. We were, doing stuff. He was just to be there in case something happened, which is fine. Except I never saw one of them be where they were supposed to be. They would come in. There was only one at a time. They would come in and they would go back to way back in the corner of the mall, away from everything, was a small office supply place, and a few other items like that. And there was a few computers in there, maybe four or five, that you could get on the internet, pay them a small amount of money and get on the internet. Of course, I'm sure. Anyway, the officer would go there, and get on the internet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the guy was looking at porn, or if the guy was playing games, or what. I mean, he wasn't working, and he wasn't where he's supposed to be, and that was. And then the other thing is, I don't know how many of them they and a lot of police departments do, especially, and also like sheriff's departments across the United States. A lot of the officers take a patrol car home with them. And in Miami, there was a lot of officers who, I mean, it's not like they were sneaking at home. I mean, the department that was there, okay, take the car home. Uh, but they would, like when they had to, go to work, if they're working the day shift, they would get in their patrol car, and traffic is really bad in, Miami. They would get on the highway heading to work, and if there was traffic in front of them or something, they would turn on their lights. I'm not sure if they turned on their sirens. I can't remember now. Uh, but they would turn on their lights, and have traffic pull over for them so they could get to work. Now they were not responding to, they were just getting to work. And then there was, when I worked at the mall, there was, especially one of the places, and I forget which store it was a department type store. And of course, the parking lot was, a lot of cars. It was a very popular mall. And especially one place, and I guess maybe the same guy, he of course, was able to take his patrol car home. And so then he's working off duty, security at a store. And he would drive his car up on the sidewalk of the, he didn't park it in the parking lot. He didn't even park it along the curb, in front of the store that he was supposed to be protecting. He pulled it up on the sidewalk up to, he didn't block the, the electric doors opening or whatever, but he parked it up there. I mean, the arrogance, and it's just unbelievable. Now, how did I get on that subject? Oh, man. By the way, Lord help me. My mother had Alzheimer's. I started to say I'm 90 years old. 90 years old? I'd start to say that. No, I'm not. I'm just in March, I turned 80. I think you'll see some videos that I've made recent videos where I'm saying, oh, well, I'm 90 years old, and I said it around the house here, where the apartment, my ex-wife and my grown son, we share this apartment and share the expenses and what have you, and I've said a few times, well, we're talking about it, and I've said, well, well, I'm 90 years old, so I'm not going to be around much longer, that's for sure. And anyway, I think it was yesterday, I said something about, I'm 90 years old. And the ex-wife said, no, you're not, you're 80. And I said, no, I'm 90. No, you're 80. And I said, oh yeah, I'm only 80. I actually felt like, oh wow. I felt like I've been given an extra 10 years to live or something. So I hope I'm not coming down with Alzheimer's. I'm kind of a little bit worried because also last week or something like that, I think I was typing something up, and I couldn't remember whether I had type 1 or type 2 diabetes. And then I had to add, I said, and that's something, and so we were really lucky with my mother, with her, where I was, well, I'm an only child. I really lucked out in a number of ways. My mother, before she got Alzheimer's, she lived in a mobile home, and she stayed home. And I mean, she just, she didn't go anyplace ever. And so when the Alzheimer's hit, she never tried to leave. And that's one of the main, didn't have to worry. And then the other thing is, I've got 4 kids. My oldest is, I think, 50. I'm not sure if that's 50 something. And my youngest is 44, I think. And so it's LaDonna and Hillary and Ken and James. But Hillary moved in with my mother when the Alzheimer's hit. Hillary moved in with her and, took care of her. And so I lucked out in that regard. So because having worked hospital security for 30 years, I saw, how hard it was dealing with people with Alzheimer's and the effect a little bit of effect it has on family and that type of stuff. There was a guy older than me who lived across from my mother with his wife, and his wife had Alzheimer's. And there was a couple of times that I would be coming home from work or doing something, and there she'd be out on the, it wasn't a street, it was a trailer park, a nice trailer park, but a nice one. And she'd be out heading down the road or something rather with her nightgown flap, and I'd, oh, no, I forget her name, get her back. My son did the same thing, I think more than I did, with that, saw her or whatever, and her husband, like I said, lived across the street in the trailer apart, from my mother. He was a World War II veteran, and I never talked to him about that, but my son talked to him, and he told some stories. And so, I mean, he was, I didn't hear all the details, whatever. And, I don't know if he was in D-Day landing but he was. Anyway, he took care of his wife as best he could. And what's so sad is, at some point, you just need help. And so I knew what was going to happen when I heard that he had put her in the nursing home, and I think she lasted a few weeks or whatever. If he could have just kept her, if he could have just, By the way, let me from my mother we got hospice, and we only used their service for 2 weeks or less. They were really great. They they asked, there was forms to fill out for her. Now she wasn't, she stayed at home, in the trailer there. But she didn't have to go into a facility or whatever. And they filled out all the forms, and they told me, okay, everything's filled out, all this documentation is done, don't call 911 when the time comes, call us, we'll send a nurse over, and everything will be, the funeral home had, everything was paid, well, my mother had paid everything ahead of time, and everything was to be taken care of. Everything was taken care of. And when she passed, all I would have to do is just call the funeral home and say, come and pick her up. And anyway, I can't remember all of the details, but everything was taken care of. So, and of course, they talked to Hillary and myself, talked about stuff like, okay, the body knows somehow, when they don't want to eat, don't worry about it. That's just part of the process. They don't think you have to shove a hamburger down their throat or, something. And they talked about everything. So hospice was showing up, I don't know, twice a week or something like that. Didn't even need to do that, but they just did that. Well, Hillary called me and said that Betty, I called my father and mother Jim and Betty my entire life, said that Betty was having a little bit of pain. She never had any pain, you know. And they had called hospice, and the nurse brought out, some pills for her. And I went over and checked, and then I left. Got the hell out of there. Tired of her saying, my mother saying to Hillary, "Is this my husband or is this my son?" That type of stuff. But anyway, they brought that pain pill out, and gave her one. I mean, they gave the pills and gave her one. They left, and then not long after that, Hillary called and said, Betty's passed. So I went on over there. I think this was it had to be before cell phones, yeah. Man, cell phones sure make a world of difference. Anyway, I went over, checked her, she'd passed. And so I called, I guess I went back home, which was a few blocks away, and I called the funeral home. I might be getting a little bit of this wrong, but I called the funeral home, and they said, "Oh, okay, we'll have somebody on the way to pick up the body." And then I also called the hospice nurse, and they said they'd be sending they'd send somebody out. And then I left and went back over a few blocks. I was living on, let's see, J Street, and my mother lived on, actually they had a name Jasmine, and my mother lived on C Street, whatever, so, in a trailer park. So I headed back on over. Well, the funeral home, for some reason, not apparently, called for some more information. And I guess they called my Jasmine phone number there. I don't remember why. I just know we didn't have cell phones. Not that we didn't have. Nobody had. Well, some people there was. At that point, I think it may have been a handful of people that had. So I'm back at the trailer, and this was in a small, I think maybe a town of 30,000. They had a good police department, and they had a good, fire department and paramedics and everything. Might have been a little bit more than 30,000. Now there was a few. I knew because I was working hospital security there at the hospital there, and I knew I think every one of the police officers and everything. There was several that were two gun ho, and I mean just but they were Well, anyway, I'm back. My mother's body's there in her room, and my Hillary's there, and my mother-in-law, at that point, my ex-mother-in-law, she was there, and I'm waiting for the funeral home to show up and waiting for the hospice nurse to show up. And the hospice nurse, had said, call the funeral. Not then, but in the beginning, call the, and then they call us and So a few blocks away, somebody had reported it in somebody's driveway seeing some type of World War II, I guess. It could have been Korea, well, who knows, a shell casing or something. And I think the person had two of them or something at the end of their driveway. And so the police department, fire department, everybody responded on a bomb. And they were all out there, detectives, and of course it was just, just an empty shell casing. And so they're all there, and of course they realized, I guess, right away, but detectives are there, fire department, EMS, everybody. And I hear sirens, a whole bunch of sirens coming. And I like I said, I worked hospital security there. Just, I could see almost, well, if I went down to the end of the block, I could see the hospital that I worked at on the Outer Belt Road, But so I thought, and then I hear all of them, and then all of a sudden, police officer pulls in, red light siren, and he comes up, and he was one of the guys who was just, I forget the nurses had a name for him. I forget what the name was, but it was like somebody, I forget, gun-ho. I mean, it wasn't gun-ho, but he was over, a little overzealous and whatever. And so he comes up, and I said, what are you here for, Well, we got a 911 call, dead. And I said, my mother, passed away. That's, there she is there. She passed away. She's signed up with the hospice system and everything's taken care of, and you're really not, well, then I said, could you get on the radio and tell the units responding that they don't need to respond code 3, lights and siren, that everything's okay, that they don't need, and he said no, and I said, well, this is, go right ahead and check, but I said, this is not supposed to operate this way. Everything is actually taken care of through the hospice, program, and he says, we have to investigate them, Of course, by then other people were, coming in the door, and he says, we have to investigate all deaths. And I said, no, you don't. Yes, we do. And I said, no, you don't. I said, at Research Belton Hospital, where I work security, as you know, up on the second floor of the hospital, every year there's about 50 patients who die. And even in the emergency room, there are a number of patients who die all the time, and some of those would be coroner's cases where you would have to respond, but most of them are not. The ER doctor and everybody just takes care of the thing, and you never respond. And I said, then there's a Beautiful Savior nursing home. And I said, you don't respond every time somebody dies at that nursing home. And so then the paramedics, then the rest of the, paramedics, oh, Jim, and, and then, of course they went over and they said, oh, and anyway, everybody showed up. Anyway, they're all there, and the hospice nurse shows up, and she comes in. Now, she didn't say, I can't remember exactly what she said. I mean, she didn't say, Jesus fucking Christ, what, she didn't say anything like that. But she said, this isn't supposed to, why are all the police and the firemen here and all this kind of stuff? And I said, apparently it didn't work too well, the system. And Then I heard the helicopter, the Eagle, actually the helicopter that it wasn't stationed at the hospital that I worked at. Well, it was stationed when I worked for the, 6 or 7 years at the main hospital. It was stationed down there, and it came out occasionally to transfer. In fact, usually if I was on duty, the nurses would be busy because it was a small hospital, and they'd ask me to call, So anyway, and she says, "What's that?" And I said, "That's a helicopter." And she says, "Are they coming here?" And I said, "Yes, they are." And she said, and I said, no, they're not actually coming here. Apparently they're probably going to main research, Research Belton Hospital over there. So, anyway, how did I get on that subject? Let's see here. The CNN story, first U.S. trial cruises of the COVID safety protocols to set sail. When I was down in that's how I guess somehow it got started out. When I was in Miami, I did a lot of walking around. I walked down places that, if you do a search like on YouTube, or maybe if you've lived there, or if you've gone there for vacation or something, but I walked through those places and whatever. And we went to the beaches, and the beaches were not crowded. And I was from Missouri. In Missouri, you have like Lake Jacomo and a lake and stuff like that. And if you go there, my parents had a pontoon boat. You'd go there and the place would be packed, But down there, they have so many beaches, it was like, wow, And, and then I walked around the area where there was the cruise ships leaving and sat there. I ate. I went to the Bayside Mall, which is nice, right down next to the ocean, and it's a little mall, and they have, eating places there, and you can do a search for Miami, or you can actually pull up, I'm sure, Bayside Mall, and so they have, tons of cruise ships that are leaving all the time down there. You can sit there and you can watch them being loaded up or unloaded and but if you remember in the past, and I can't remember the name of the virus, flu type of thing. I'm not sure it would be a flu, but all the time these people were going out on these cruises. Not all the time, but too many times people could be paying good money to go out in these, with their whole family, get on the cruise ship and go out, and sometimes the entire ship came down. I forget, there was several things that puke was, out in the hallways. It was just horrendous. Everybody comes down sick with this. It wasn't, it wasn't the virus. It was just, and I forget the name of it. Common, and the cruise ships, were trying to do everything they could to stop that happening because it was hurting their business. And then, of course, the COVID virus came along, and so the cruise ships haven't been running. And so, and we have the vaccine. We have the vaccine now. I've had, my ex-wife. She's had her two shots. I've had my 2 shots. My son, I think, has just had one of his shots. He's scheduled to go in the next, I think in a few days to get the second shot. Uh, but so things are opening, things are opening back up, and it's been really bad, hasn't it? I mean, what, almost a year of being, you know, having to wear a mask or staying at home all the time and that type of stuff. And the cruise ships, I mean, have lost tons of money, and other places, businesses, everything. And so now the cruise ships are going to take a couple. I'm not sure how many. They're going to do a couple of test runs or whatever, and they're going to be filled with employees only, and 95% of the employees will be have had will have the vaccine, something like that. I'll put a link to this. And they're going to take the ship out and see how it goes. Now the problem is what the cruise ships want to do, but they can't do. What the cruise ships want to do is there is my card. I'm not going to show you the front of it because they say you're not supposed to do that, because of an ID situation. Some people are counterfeiting these things. That's the virus card that shows I've had my 2 shots. So, what the cruise ships want to do is start out and say, okay, you have to show your ID card that you've had, and that's who we'll go with to begin with. It'll be people who have had their shot. It's going to cut into our revenue a little bit, maybe because we can't totally fill the ships up and stuff, but that's what we want to do. And the governor of Florida had a Republican, by the way, Republican governor of Florida, said, hell no. And he had the legislature, I'm not sure if he had the legislature pass something. I think he did it by executive order. He signed a thing saying that, must have been because there's fines and everything else involved, must have been done in the Republican legislature. He had a thing passed that no business or place, and surely not the cruise ships, nobody can require somebody to show that they, to show their card and to show that they have, had the vaccine. And if the cruise ships do require somebody to show the card, they will be fined. It'll be a crime, and they'll be charged I think it's $1,500 or something per person. So I don't know how many a cruise ship holds, 500 people, I guess different amounts or whatever. So the cruise ship's hands, are tied. The system is just messed up. A governor, we have 50 states, and a governor shouldn't be able to do that. There are things that the governor should be able to do, and the legislature should be able to do. Of course, our Constitution is, the things not specified in the Constitution of the United States, then the states, whatever. But the system needs to be changed, or what you need to do is just don't elect Republicans, Or like with this governor, when he does this, that should just be, of course it's not going to happen. That should just be, the people should just say, no, Governor, you're being a stupid ass. What's wrong with you? And unless he says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so terribly sorry, and strikes it out, then they should just go to the special election and remove his ass. Or, and when they get this, I'm sure, what's going to happen is you're going to get these, one, you're going to have these ships go, maybe not these, the first two or three that go out, but you're going to have these ships going out filled with passengers, and they're going to get that other virus, which is bad. It was so bad. I mean, that there was, I think I saw on YouTube, maybe someplace, maybe it was on CNN. I mean, it was actually, vomit all over the place, vomit on the floor. It was like the ship was being flooded, but it was with vomit. And it was just, it was just terrible. That's probably going to happen. But we also may have the virus, is going to, Corbett virus is going to happen. I tell you, we just need educated. I've mentioned this before, when I was a kid, polio, I came around. I'm not sure how old I was when the vaccine was. I think I was in grade school. Yeah, probably would have been in grade school. But before that, every summer, we only had like 3 TV stations, I think, at that time. Well, in the beginning, we didn't have TV stations, but eventually we had, And every summer, movie theaters closed, pools closed, and the local news, because there wasn't any CNN network, there wasn't any satellites up, and stuff. But that was just what you saw on television. How many cases of, now it wasn't as bad as what we've gone through with this, with this virus, but it was bad, and it was affecting mainly children, and the polio, infantile paralysis or whatever. Some kids, it hit the lungs, and kids ended up in iron lungs. And it was bad. The machine, breathed for them. And I can remember, and I'm sure this was not correct. I mean, it was like a local TV station or something, said that. I'm sure it wasn't, correct. Maybe in a few cases it was correct or something. Maybe if you had the polio in your lungs or something, maybe they. But I remember they've said something about that if you couldn't touch your chin to your chest, that meant that you had polio. And every night when I got into bed, I would, touch my chin to my chest. But, we have people that are opposed to vaccines. The government has no right to tell us, and, the vaccines don't work, and it's all there. I mean, when they give you the vaccine, they're actually Amazon's putting a circuit board in to control it's just crazy. And some of these people are politicians. Some of these people are, the leaders of big churches. And here in Texas, we had someplace sort of isolated, but there's a big church there, a Protestant church. And the minister there, preached against vaccines and measles. measles broke out in that community, and it was just, horrible. And when I was a kid, I got the measles, and I think you're only supposed to be able to get measles once. I think I got it twice. And I think what it was, and maybe I'm wrong about this, there was a 3-day version and a 7-day version, I think. And then the mumps, what parents would do, because both my parents were alcoholics, I I went to school, but I didn't really I had friends that I'd go out and we'd play guns and cars and war and army and all that kind outside, but I didn't really but, and I was the only child, and most of the kids in the neighborhood, had large families. It was the custom then. And this wasn't a Mormon community or anything, it was just a normal community. But when the mumps came around, mothers would, oh, your Billy has mumps? Okay, well, can Jimmy come over and spend the night over at your place? Because they wanted the boys to get the mumps. Because if you get the mumps later in life, it can make you, because of the testicles or something, make you sterile, and you wouldn't be able to give any grandkids to the mom and dad. That was hey, and it wasn't just it was like have a party of boys or whatever. Okay, well, let's have a party and invite little Billy here has the mumps, and let's invite all of his boyfriends over to, well, not boyfriends, hey, this is, but I get so crazy when something like this, remember Ammon Bundy, the guy from, where was it? That he was a rancher out west, and he, right-wing conservative Republican, blah, 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 blah. Had a lot of cattle, successful, and his cattle grazed on U.S. federal lands, because there's a lot of lands out west and in other places that are, federal lands. It's not, and so the government lets ranchers have their cattle, their sheep, probably not at the same time. Remember the cattle wars and the sheep wars back? Well, you don't remember it, but you watched John Wayne movies or something. But and the deal was, okay, well, your cattle can graze on this government land. They had some rules, and you only have to pay, X amount of money. Small amount of money, a lot less than what it would cause to what you'd have to spend to actually feed your cattle. And so this was a fantastic deal for Ammon Bundy and others like him out there. Well, when the federal government comes around and says eventually, after a long time, oh, you owe X amount of money. And he says, fuck you. And they say, hey, no, you've been using this land, and all the other ranchers, they all pay. They're happy to pay, because it's a good deal. And he the government says, well, we're going to collect, the money, or we'll come out and collect your cattle. You have to pay. Because they went to the courts and everything, and the court said he has to pay, all that kind of stuff. And he just says, fuck you, you're not, I got guns, my friend's got guns. He sends the word out across the United States. People drive, guys drive, with their pickup trucks and their guns in the back window, and they go out there, and a few, I'm not sure if they'd be federal rangers or who would, show up and to take the cattle. And so there's all these right-wing people with their, guns pointing at the, the rangers, and it's like, there might have been 25 or I'm not sure how many, 50 rangers or something. Probably not that many. They were just there to, round up the cattle and until he paid what he owed. And there's with telescopic sights and everything, the ridges were covered with all these guys who had come, and Ammon Bundy is like, we'll fucking kill them, we'll shoot them dead, the police, anybody who tries to, and this is war and blah, 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 and not very much happened. The Rangers left, and, they said, oh, well, let's just, So, it says here, Ammon Bundy, the rancher who captured national attention when he led an armed occupation of federal land. Well, that's something different that he did. The next thing was, after he successfully got the federal government's rangers, or whatever they would be, park rangers or whatever they were, to back down, he went up to Oregon. I think his son first went up to Oregon, and they took over a park up there. They ran the park rangers off. They trashed the place. They whatever, and nothing. Said he drew national headlines in 2016 when an armed occupation of the Mueller Wildlife Refuge in Oregon lasted for 41 days and ended in an intense standoff with police that left one dead. Bundy and 15 others were indicted by a federal grand jury. He was later acquitted. More recently, he was placed under an order to stay away from the Idaho State House after refusing to leave the building during a protest last year when he and others were at the state capitol demanding an end to the state of emergency because of the virus. He was charged with trespassing, resisting arrest. He then missed his trial date in March, and it just goes on and on.
His followers were involved in a confrontation on government property. Bundy stood outside a Boise, Idaho courthouse, refusing to wear a mask required to enter. Inside, a judge waited to start Bundy's trial on charges including trespassing, stemming from another confrontation last year, when Bundy refused to leave the Idaho State House. The judge on Monday ultimately cited Bundy for failure to appear and had him arrested. A week before the altercation in Boise, Bundy was on a tour of Utah to recruit supporters and rally new ones. A crowd he addressed at Prep Fest in Sevier County was steeling itself for dark days ahead. Store food, buy generators, and keep your guns handy, they said here. Something bad could be coming soon.
Well, I think that our rights are being challenged in this great and wonderful land.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ammon Bundy.
Bundy is at the center of a new movement.
It's a bonus to be able to meet Mr. Ammon and to hear his information, his take.
What do you like about him?
He's a rancher, and he's honest, and he keeps his word.
Bundy comes from a family whose name has become synonymous with armed confrontations with the government.
This is our land!
In recent years, members of his family have occupied federal lands in Oregon and Nevada, which led to high-profile standoffs with law enforcement. Both of those landed the Bundys in federal court. In Oregon, Ammon and a brother were acquitted on firearms charges and conspiracy to impede federal workers. In Nevada, they and their father were accused of using armed force against law enforcement in a battle over cattle on federal land. The case ended in a mistrial. Since the start of the pandemic, Ammon Bundy has been working to organize people who are angry over restrictions.
Without a mask, yeah.
Last year, Bundy created a private social media platform for people who think pandemic rules and guidelines are part of a government plot. The idea is that members can drum up a protest with the click of a mouse. Bundy calls the group People's Rights.
This network was built to communicate with people, one, to educate them, or at least to gather to be educated, and also to activate and say, look, the governor doesn't have authority to do these things.
It's just unbelievable that these type of people get away with doing this type of thing. And you just need to, and I'm not saying shoot these people or anything, but I'm sure he hasn't paid that money for the, the government should just be able to go to court and, get a court order that a lien that he owes X amount of money for that, and seize his cattle, seize his land. And when they go to do that, if he is there with armed, people, well, then there should be consequences. And it should be consequences, but there isn't. It just doesn't. These people get away with this type of stuff. Our system of government, has worked really well until recently, and because of, the internet, and because of all the things that have happened, and because you have, hate radio, people on AM radio in every community shouting craziness and stuff, and you have, something needs to be done. I'm not smart enough to know exactly what needs to be done. And we want to keep, the 10 amendments to the Constitution, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, all of them. We want to keep all of them. But there has to be, I don't think our system of government is going to last. We had President Trump, launch an insurrection against the United States of America and have his people, break and smash into, the Congress, and had a mob, going to kill the Vice President of the United States and the Speaker of the House. There has to be some consequences. And I don't know. I think we have to have a fundamental change, a legal change to our system of government. This worked, when, until now, and it doesn't work now. And it's out of control. And then the other thing is we have X number of people, a certain number of people who are incredibly stupid. And our education system needs to be, changed. And I'm not talking about indoctrinating children, I'm not talking about, I'm just talking about, educate, and our education system doesn't work. And like I said, like I mentioned earlier, our Constitution, specifies that powers that are not, specified to the federal government in the Constitution or whatever, then those things that are not mentioned, the states can do. But then you've got dumbass Republican governors in, like Florida, and something needs to be done, and it has to be done, not the way Trump wants to do it, but it has to be done, using our Constitution. And I don't think the governor of Florida should be able to say, no, a business can't require somebody to have to show a ID, a card that you've had the vaccine, and something needs to be done, and I don't know how you do it. And I'm 80 years old, not 90, but I don't think I'm going to be around long enough to see what has to happen. I can think of some things but I think the courts would probably, it used to be, you had AM and FM radio stations, and then eventually you had television stations. And all of those stations had to have an FCC, Federal Communications Commission, license. And they had to abide by certain rules and regulations, and every year or something they had to turn in a paper to the FCC showing what they had done, for the community, what services they had performed in order to keep their license. And of course their license was worth a lot of money. There was also, I forget the name of it, I don't want to see this guy's face. There was, you're probably saying, I don't want to see his face. There was a policy, I forget what it was. What was it? Oh, I should be able to remember it. But if a radio station put somebody on, because it's public airway, it's public, there's a limited number of frequencies, channels, and what have you. If they put somebody on who said that the Earth was flat, then they needed to put somebody else on, to give the other point of view, which is sort of stupid in a way. I mean, well, but they did away with, that. And then I think they did away with it after then you had, CNN and satellites up. Of course, those satellites they're using radio but because it was like, well, they're not using the AM broadcast band or the FM broadcast band, or they're not using the television channels, they're, doing it. I think one thing you could do, but it would be fought and maybe it should be. One thing you could do is say, say the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, has authority over CNN and Fox News and all of the satellites. Those satellites are up there, they're transmitting, they have frequencies that are assigned for that purpose by the United States in compliance with the International Telecommunications Commission, and there are limited frequencies and stuff like that. They should just be, no, you have to meet certain standards. But then how do you get into the situation where you have these people who are raving that the vaccines don't work? Tell that to the people who didn't get polio. Tell that to the people who didn't get measles and mumps, and the problem is, it was sort of, I think, too, with the thing of AM, FM stations and that type of and television stations having to have the other point of view on. I mean, they hated it, but also it was sort of like, if somebody says the world is flat, and you bring somebody on that says, I know the world is, round. I know it's not exactly round, okay, that makes it like, oh, okay, well, and that's the situation we're in now, and that's the situation that, Fox News and others, and even probably CNN, you have somebody on, somebody says something, and then you get, oh, like they've done that with, global warming or whatever. I mean, like 99.9% of scientists worldwide say, yes, global warming, is happening, and here's what's going to happen. The computers show it. This is what's going to happen in the future if we don't do something. But you have someplace somebody, who, and he may not even actually believe the opposite point of view, but he'll get money and he'll appear on he'll appear on television because the television stations will have to get, okay, we just had this scientist on talking. Now we need to find somebody who's going to give an opposing point of, it shouldn't be, it should be, like you're talking about the space program or something, and then somebody on the, the thing says, well, the astronauts didn't go to the moon. That was all fake. It ought to be like security, like CNN should say, security, just escort that person out off of the property, and he's not to be allowed back on. Now that's not going, then be people say, oh, freedom of speech, and especially if it comes to like like, oh, the vaccines don't work, don't take vaccines, and don't don't wear a mask and all that kind of stuff. Like, what the fuck, Anyway, was that all I wanted to talk about? I think it was. Oh, man. By the way, let me mention this. I don't think I ever mentioned this before. I didn't. Back when the, not Ruby Ridge, but the one here in Branch Davidian thing here in Texas. Okay, President Clinton was elected President of the United States, and the Republicans it was like, I have mentioned this, like I've always followed politics, and that even as when I was in grade school, I was watching the, hearings and all that kind of stuff. When there was talk of, the elections and stuff were coming up, and here I follow politics, and I follow, and it was like the people were going crazy about Clinton. And it was like, oh, he's evil and he's all that, and I'm like, who in the hell is Clinton? I had to look him up. I had to do a search. Oh, he's governor of Arkansas. Fuck, I forgot we had a state called Arkansas. Oh, okay, he's a governor. And then he was elected. They have a conference, a group of governors. All the governors get together, all 50 of them get together, and they communicate, and, well, now they probably don't get together. Probably no point in having that, but, they get together, and they elect somebody to be head of the thing, and somebody the assistant head of the governors. And then, of course, I'm not sure at the same time, or if they have a different thing, where the Republican governors get together, probably at the same event, and the Democratic get together and they elect, somebody to be the head of the, the whatever. And Bill Clinton, governor of Arkansas, was, picked to be the head of the, conference of the 50 governors. So the guy must have had, well, he was a Rhodes Scholar. But it was just rage against the Clintons and against, So when Clinton was elected, it just continued. It continued the entire time that he was, the president. And when he left office, hatred for him continued from the Republicans and against his wife, and just insanity just, went on. And then when she was Secretary of State or whatever, after, Clinton was no longer the president, stuff like that, the Republicans had these investigations against her, and there was nothing there, and they spent millions and millions of dollars and years, trying to find something on her, and there just wasn't anything on them. And so then after, okay, that was when Clinton was president, the Attorney General, I forget her name, he appointed, his cabinet, he appointed, it almost comes to me, but she was so anyway, the Branch Davidian has that thing going on. And anyway, with Clinton president, no matter what it was, if somebody sneezed in the government, no matter what it was, the Republicans were, so when the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, when they launched that raid on the Branch Davidian, the Republicans just went fucking crazy. And I think, if I may be wrong about this, I think at the beginning it was like, the Republicans were like, smash them, destroy them, kill them all, let God sort them out. I may be wrong about that, but it doesn't matter because it's the same, same thing. And then when it, stretched out and stretched, when the government didn't go in there and do anything, and the thing went on, then it was like the Republicans were, they are, the Clintons, and they can't do anything, and the Attorney General's, Attorney General doesn't have balls. If it was a man, he'd have balls, and he would, it just went on and on with the craziness. And then, of course, they move against the Branch Davidian, and, the place burns down, kids die. It was now the government didn't set the place on fire. What's his name? He told them to spread the gasoline inside and start the fires and what have you. Now but when that was all over with, my thing was, and if they had listened to me, I was blogging, of course, blogging, been blogging forever. Before there was a YouTube, before there was anything, since 1982. When that took place, I said, okay, I went into some detail, but I'll kind of abbreviate it right here. I said, well, what they need to do is not fire the Attorney General, because that's what the Republicans wanted, and if you did, not fire the Attorney, and actually she didn't do anything, wrong. But I said, what they need to do is immediately fire the head of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency. Fire him. And then fire everybody. Of course, you can't do that because you have rules of employment and how you have to get, somebody has to be, all this kind of. But I made, fire so-and-so, so-and-so, and so, down to the person who designed that first raid, when they went in. Instead of going up to the door, instead of sending the local sheriff up, to the Branch Davidian and knock on the door, and well, first you could have called up on the phone and said, what was his name? Weaver? was it Weaver? No, I don't know. Ask him to come, please come by the sheriff's office. I want to talk to you about something. And if he said, I said, you could say, hey, I'll send a car over for you. Not a, well, you wouldn't tell him, you just wouldn't send a police car. You'd send if you have any unit that's not, pick him up, take him to the station and talk, tell him what the problem is, Or send somebody out to the door, the sheriff or whatever, or maybe a detective with him or something, and knock on the door and say, I'd like to talk to him and explain what the problem, is. But what happened is, the alcohol and tobacco and firearms, send out a SWAT team of people, and they're up on the roof smashing in windows and doing all kinds of stuff. And then how it ended up. What they anyway, so I said, fire all these people, and that's not enough. Then what you need to do is, this is going to send a message throughout the government to other agencies, to the FBI and all the, then what you do is you do away with the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. That organization doesn't exist anymore, but you still need these agents, except the ones that you've fired to show an example. And what you do is, you're going to move those things into the FBI to take care of. And now these agents of the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, these guys, you'll be working, in the FBI agency. But no, you will not have a metal badge. You won't have a badge. You'll have an ID card, that says FBI such and such, like junior, I won't say junior FBI, but you're not going to give them an ID. You're not going to let them fuck up a situation like this and then become FBI agents, Just think what they'd do if they were FBI agents, I mean, you need to send, that would be, if you did that, if they'd have done that, if you had done that, did away with the agency, moved these people over into the FBI at less pay than an FBI agent, and blah, 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 there wouldn't have been the guys who blew up the Oklahoma federal building. They did it because they were enraged about what happened and how it happened. And that's why they went and blew up the federal building in Texas. In Oklahoma City. And there have been some of these other situations that have happened. Ruby Ridge or something. I don't think those things would have happened either, because they used, that there was no, that the federal government and the police, they were out of control and they did such and such, and so we've got to defend ourselves and do that kind of. There would have been a totally different. I worked at, as I mentioned this before many times, small hospital, research Belton Hospital in Belton, Missouri. And I came in, it was a Saturday or Sunday, and I worked 12 hours on Saturday and Sunday, and then 8 hours on 2 other days, and then there was another guy who worked the other 3 days. He worked 8 hours each of those. I came in, and the emergency room and the hallways and everything were packed with guys in military khakis and stuff, and there was a lot of other patients there too. And I said, wow, what's going on? Why are all the military here? And the nurses said, no, they're alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agents. And I said, well, what are they here for, Well, they were doing their parachute jump practicing, and one of them sprained his ankle. And I said something like, "What in the fucking goddamn shit," and like it was like, Jim, well, I've never seen you like, if these guys want to be in the military, then they should be in the fucking military. They shouldn't be out playing, whatever. Now, okay, there might be some occasion when agents of the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, or the FBI, or some other agency, there might be some, but these guys are high-fiving each other, and it's all fun, and, they're probably already started to drink, I mean, it's like they're spending our money going out doing stuff that just encourages them to, so anyway, that's my 2 cents. Man, how many rules have I violated of YouTube? Of course, I'm not monetizing this. I mean, that's the main thing, and the language and political stuff and all that kind of stuff. Very few of my videos get monetized. It doesn't matter anyway. I don't have that many people, I could, and in fact, I have sometimes just turned off the entire monetization thing because I think I've been earning about $15 a month for the last, and they don't even give you the $15. You have to wait till it amounts up to $100. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Do I want you to leave a thumbs up? No, I don't care. Hell yeah. Actually, I think it does. If you leave a thumbs up, well, if you don't agree with it, of course, leave a thumbs down. Well, you don't have to. No, nobody's going to agree with. It shouldn't be that. I really don't know sometimes how to do. I do a lot of, thumbs up for videos. Very few thumbs down. I don't. You don't know. If somebody makes a YouTube video, and say it's a really, well, not like this, but let's say it's a really good video, and everything, graphics and zooming in and all that, which I never do any of that stuff, I should, but I don't want to. So, if somebody makes a really good, the audio's good, the video's good, and they do, cuts and close-ups and zooms in and all that kind of stuff, but, so the thumbs up, is it, okay, thumbs up because that's a good, good video? Or is it like, okay, I agree with everything this guy says, I agree, so it's a thumbs up. Or I don't agree with what this guy, he said a couple things, he said he didn't believe in God. He said he was a Democrat or whatever, thumbs down. I don't know how you judge the video, how somebody, I don't know what to do. I mean, very rarely I ever give somebody thumbs down. Anyway, thank you very much for watching.